house in Baltimore, and the Orioles have won a game, and we're kind of waiting and waiting more, and they went to Chicago to take on the worst team in the American League. But who knows, Luke Jones? Maybe the Orioles are the worst team in the American League. Hard to say at this point, but hard to argue with at this point as well.
Well, record-wise, they're not, but the way they've played over the last 5 weeks, yeah. It's been that miserable. I guess the only silver lining was Toronto lost on Tuesday night, so they avoided falling into last place. So, they have that going for them, which is nice.
Toronto still sucks. There, I got to say it.
But this game came, and it's easy just to point to Matt Davidson's grand slam in the 6th inning. Look, that finished things off. But the Orioles, their 5 turns at the plate leading up to Davidson hitting that grand slam, they had a runner in scoring position, and they didn't cash in a single one.
That Machado swing on the strikeout early with 2 on was just like pitcher's over his head.
Trumbo expanded the zone as well. There's just some bad at bats. They had opportunities. And look, give Derek Collins some credit, but at the same time, the Orioles really helped him out by expanding the zone on a few occasions. So, you look at that, and the other thing, I'm going to put this one on Buck Showalter a little bit more. I think anyone who saw Alec Asher up into the 6th inning, he pitched pretty well. And I was hesitant to say anything. It almost felt like, man, the way this rotation's going, you don't want to...
No, you were tweeting about it. You've gotten snarky on Twitter during this losing streak, Luke.
Not me. You have to keep yourself entertained somehow. But
people are going to start saying that you're the Jeff Sessions to my Donald Trump if you keep this up, with those kind of comments.
But all kidding aside, to me, Alec Asher had pitched well. This starting rotation has no confidence whatsoever. They've been completely battered. I thought this was a chance for Buck Showalter to play psychologist a little bit when it got to the point where Asher gives up a single to lead off the 6th or the bottom of the 6th, and then hits a batter, and then walks Todd Frazier. At that point, I think anyone who was watching, and I even tweeted about it before it happened, that it looked like Alec Asher was done. And I have no idea if Richard Blyer would have come in and done anything differently. He may have come in and given up a grand slam just as easily.
Well, the real story for him is 3rd time through the rotation, right?
Yeah,
he made it 2 times through the lineup. And look, I reached for my phone, at the end of 5 and said, man, 5 innings, 2 runs. Yeah, they're losing. They're still losing. That would have been my snarky part. But, I was like, all right, well, this kid went out there and stopped the bleeding for a night, right?
Yeah.
But they let him out there to bleed.
Right, and that's kind of my whole point here. And look, Buck's dealing with a depleted bullpen. We haven't even talked about this very much because there's been no need to. The Orioles haven't come close to having a lead late in the game.
Yeah, when the bullpen comes in, it's 6-0. What difference does it make, right?
Yeah, but the thing is, right now with O'Day being on the DL, joining Britton there, they have 2 relievers that they really trust. And look, Blyer's pitched well. Certainly he's, I think, earned some opportunities to pitch in some meaningful situations.
Just like Rocky Blyer told us he would in Houston back in the winter, right?
Right. But,
and he did.
But I just, when you're in the midst of a stretch like the Orioles are right now, when you're a manager or a coach leading a team that's in a stretch like the Orioles are right now, part of your role becomes psychologist more than anything else. And I thought once, especially when Asher walked Frazier to load the bases with nobody out. Look, it's an impossible situation for just about anyone, but I would have taken him out there. Maybe, just maybe, you salvage some semblance of a good outing, a good feeling that really this whole rotation needs right now from a mental standpoint. And, you roll the dice and see if Blyer can get a ground ball and maybe hold the White Sox to 1 run in the course of getting out of it. Instead, Buck leaves Asher in, and Davidson hits a grand slam, and suddenly what had been a really solid outing statistically looked terrible. So, and that's not to completely absolve Asher. I'm in agreement with you. I even wrote about it at WNST.net. I think how he profiles, and we saw him in the month of May, he looked like a pretty good middle reliever. Kind of served in that Vance Worley kind of role where, gave them some length, but could also pitch in the 7th or 8th inning if your bullpen was a little short. I think Alec Asher has proven to be a useful piece, but when your starting rotation has 1 reliable starting pitcher, this is where you kind of find yourself. But I still think, and like I said, It's really easy to second guess. I understand that. I'm the first person to point that out whenever Buck is questioned as far as leaving a pitcher in too long. But I think anyone who watched Alec Asher in that bottom of the sixth inning, you could see he was completely toast when he walked Frazier on 5 pitches. Yet, for whatever reason, Buck left him in, and I get it. Richard Blyer or whoever they would have brought in that situation wasn't going to be in a much better position, but I think he would at least have been going with a fresher arm in that spot. So, as much as Alec Asher takes the loss statistically, and the outing doesn't look good when you're just looking at the box score, I think he deserved a little bit better, certainly from his offense, but I think his manager let him down there a little bit as well.
Wow, so we're going after Buck now. I mean, everybody's fair game, though, right? When you don't win, I don't know who to praise here other than like Trey Mancini at this point, right? I mean, other than him, and we can give Castillo the day off and let him DH or whatever, but the rest of it, they all got a lot of splaining to do right now.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about Jonathan Scopes had a good year, base running blunder on Monday night notwithstanding. But I mean, you just go down the list. I mean, Joey Rickard had a nice night. Jones had a couple hits.
Machado drove in the only run.
He did, but then he had 2 other opportunities later in the game, good opportunities to drive in runs, and he did nothing.
Dude, he looks sick, man. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt about that.
I mean, if there's one saving grace to Machado having the wrist issue, it's you're hoping, and we did see that on Monday. He actually went the other way a couple times. You're hoping he gets back to optimal Manny Machado, which is hitting line drives all over the field and still hitting a lot of home runs in the process, instead of the guy that we've seen that has clearly been pressing since that Boston series, where all the drama occurred and he hit the home runs. Since then he's kind of just gotten in that habit where he's trying to hit home runs. He's over swinging. He's missing the ball a lot more than he did previously in his career, and I mean, I don't know what the answer
You know what's interesting, man? First off, Chapter 5 of the Peter Principles was released on Wednesday morning, so you can go read that. That happened in the early morning. And I wrote a little bit recently, not wrote because I wrote this stuff 4 years ago, but I reread it and re-edited the Roberto Alomar spitting incident and what happened on the backside of that and being under siege. I really feel like for Machado, there's no spitting incident. I don't want to make it like that, but I think when that sort of thing happens, he feels a little under siege. He looks like the look on his face doesn't look as confident. His body language. I mean, anyone would look at him right now with the sound down and say, dude looks like a different dude right now. I mean, maybe with the glove, and I know he's made some great plays, and I know that's a great confidence booster for him. The team's going well. He's not going well. He got spiked last week. It's a bad season. Everywhere he goes, he wakes up and he's hitting 218. And I don't think he's ever been through this in his life. And as someone who struggled in my 48 years, man, it's no fun when you're struggling for the first time and you go into a funk when you feel like things have been going well, and especially when you're young and impressionable and a millionaire and about to become a 100 millionaire, and everybody's whispering all that in your ear. And he hasn't looked like a good baseball player since last September. I mean, the hardest thing to stop doing is, losing and getting out of a slump. And, I just think the body language part of it, I think a lot of it's as much psychology as it is capability, because he's still capable of hitting 320 and hitting 700 home runs and playing the next 20 years and making $400 million. But somewhere along that, Steve Sax stopped finding first base at one point, right? Literally, right?
Yeah, I mean, the mental side of any sport is going to be there, and I think you're on to something there as far as I think there's just a lot of factors at work here. One, he got into some bad habits starting late last year. I mean, go back and look at how he performed in the second half of the season. Now, it's nothing like what we're talking about right now, but certainly the numbers tailed off from the first half. Got a little more pool happy, started hitting the ball in the air more than he was. So you have that. You get off to a rough start. You have what happened with Boston, which I think I'm not going to say that's the sole reason why the Orioles have struggled the way they have over the last 4 or 5 weeks by any means, because that would be silly to ignore how god awful the pitching has been, and the fact that their offense has been underwhelming compared to expectations. But I think there was some mental fatigue from all of that that they've dealt with, and specifically Machado. And you do have the pressure of he's not quite 25 years old, and we're talking about this guy like he's been a superstar for years, and he kind of has been, right? I mean, it's amazing.
From the minute he arrived, he was the star of the show, and 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 maybe it looked easy to us, and I know it's not easy to do, or we'd all be doing it, but it looked easy to him, right?
Yeah.
It did.
Yeah, and when you have someone going through something like that, and then everyone's asking him about the contract, everyone's asking him about his future, whether it's Baltimore, New York, Philadelphia, wherever, so he's hearing all that, and I don't care how good you are at compartmentalizing, that's a challenge. That's going to seep into your, the subconscious and even the conscious when you're going through a period like this that he's been through these last few months. Not to say he won't come out of it, but you have to think it's a combination of all those things. And now with the team not playing well on top of that, where you're seeing everyone press, whether it's someone trying to do too much defensively, someone trying to take an extra base when it's not there, over swinging, expanding the zone even more than these guys do normally, being the not so disciplined hitters that most of them are, and certainly the pitching being what it is. I mean, it's really easy for it to snowball, and we've seen that snowball with Manny Machado. And the one saving grace, as you pointed out, has been that his defense has still been superb. So he's still been a good player overall, but not anywhere close to the superstar player that he's become over these last few years. And whether he gets back to that sooner rather than later, the Orioles certainly hope so. Whether it's in terms of trying to turn around this season that is quickly becoming a complete disaster, or if it's just to rebuild his value a little bit if you are looking to trade him at some point here in the not too distant future. But it's been difficult to watch, and it's just one of those situations where you just know how talented he is. It's not as though he lost all ability to play baseball. He's not quite 25 years old, but he's
still going to make a lot of money. He's going to play in the big leagues a long time, but how long this bottom lasts is going to define him. When it comes time to giving him $300 or $400 million.
Oh, no doubt. Regardless.
And when he comes out of this, he better hit 420. Now, it better not be, well, he'll hit 270 the rest of the year. Really? Then he'll hit 242. He needs to really go into one of these, 42 for, 118, with 12 bombs and, that sort of run in July. And he's certainly capable of doing that.
Yeah, he's capable of doing that. And the reality is at this point, Nestor, when you're hitting in the low 200s as we're approaching the 4th of July here in the next few weeks, his final numbers probably just aren't going to be – he's not going to have a career year this year. I think it's pretty obvious at this point that we're not going to see that. And, Bryce Harper had a down year not too long ago where, batting average was way down.
I'm a little older than you, but go look at Mark McGwire's baseball card. Yeah. He had a year in there where he couldn't find the baseball. Literally couldn't find the baseball.
Right. So it's not unprecedented. You don't like it to happen. It's not to excuse it, but as we said, Manny Machado has been so incredibly good at making this look easy that you forget how difficult it can be, and you forget what kind of how much it wears on you mentally when it's not there for you. It's been difficult to watch. It's been incredibly frustrating. His struggles are a big reason why the Orioles have struggled, just like we've talked about Zach Britton's absence and Kevin Gausman taking 4 steps backward instead of taking a step forward, and a number of other players in this lineup not exactly performing up to expectations. It's not just one thing, but it's a number of things adding up, and I think the top of the list is the pitching, and Manny Machado not being Manny Machado is one of those reasons that has to be right up there for why this team now finds itself under 500 for the first time since, the next to last day of the 2015 season.
Well, Luke, because I am the positive guy in Baltimore media around here these days, I've got some good news for you today. You want it?
What's that?
Their number 1 starter starts on Wednesday night. You want the bad news now? Their number 2 starter starting for the Chicago White Sox. How about that?
I thought you were going to say the number 2 starter goes tomorrow.
No, Miguel Gonzalez, we'll get to see him. And, boy, he went through sort of a raging bull thing here at Camden Yards recently, right? I mean, you'd like to think he'll be a little more calm, but there was emotion involved. I talked to Dan Hayes earlier this week and Paul Scribina, who covered the team out in Chicago, and they said that, he was kind of a hot mess that night.
Yeah, Miguel Gonzalez, he loved it here. And, it was a great story. He more than anyone else may have epitomized that 2012 Orioles team. I mean, this was a guy who came out of nowhere. I can recall, I'm pretty sure it was Buck Showalter telling this story. It may have been another member of the organization. But when he was with the Orioles in spring of 2012, he was in minor league camp. It wasn't even a spring training invite. And
wasn't a guy who ever rated as a major league pitcher. Let's be honest. Right? He was just a guy. He was an arm.
He had an arm injury earlier in his career, so that kind of derailed him. But yeah, we're not talking about a guy that was a top 25 prospect or anything crazy like that. But they recognized him that spring, and they said, "You got to check out this Miguel Gonzalez guy. He actually looks pretty good." Went to the minor leagues, did his thing, got called up halfway through the season, and the rest was history. It was one of the Orioles' best pitchers that year, and really for the next 2 years after that.
Boy, he banged around a long time. It's been a long time since I looked at his minor league stats.
Oh, it's crazy.
I mean, it's like a Bible. I mean, he
was Mexican League.
Mexican League in 7 years. He played for what looks to be about 15, 18 different teams. I mean, Rancho Cucamonga, Cedar Rapids, Arkansas, Mazatlan, Salem, Pawtucket, Portland, Salem. I mean, he'd been everywhere. And, actually had done okay at Double-A ball. He had a really good year in 2007. Now, keep in mind, when he came up, it was 12. But in 2007, he went 8-4, made 19 starts, threw 130 pretty good Double-A innings as a member of the Angels, and that was the end of his rope. He wound up in the Red Sox organization the next year.
Yeah, like I said, I had an arm injury at one point, and he was never a top prospect.
He didn't pitch in 2009.
Right. So, Miguel Gonzalez, you look at the numbers. I mean, he hasn't, he's had his ups and he's had his downs with the White Sox, but overall has certainly been much better than most of what the Orioles have been throwing out there, going back to the beginning of last year even. So, his ERA 4.89, nothing special, but you look at it in comparison to what the Orioles are dealing with right now, be their number 2 starter, right?
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah, so, I always root for Miguel Gonzalez. I still think, I think in retrospect, looking back at that, his jettison being as hasty as it was, as rash as that was, I think that was absolutely a product of what had happened with Bud Norris the year before. Remember, Norris was terrible that spring, was owed, $8 million, somewhere in that neighborhood in his final year of arbitration, was absolutely horrendous. They finally designated him in July. They wasted money on him because they got rid of him, and also wasted money because he was far below league replacement. I think they were so gun-shy that the same thing was going to happen to Miguel Gonzalez that they got rid of him way too quickly. So, it is what it is. It's one on a long list of starting pitching items that you could point to that have been missteps that have kind of led to the Orioles being where they are right now, and not exactly having a lot of optimism moving forward, despite the efforts of Cody Sedlock and Hunter Harvey finally being back on a mound again and getting close to being back from Tommy John surgery. But
they have a chance to win tonight. I know that. Dylan Bundy's pitching.
They do. With Dylan Bundy on the hill, you always feel good about that. And at this point, the way things are trending, without a dramatic turnaround here sooner rather than later, you kind of get back into that mode of you look for individual player success, and the team success just hasn't been there for a while now.
I remember the Dave Tremblay era. I don't want to go back there. I didn't dig that.
Where you're basically tracking Nick Markakis at bats and
hoping Brian Roberts can hit some doubles or something.
Yeah, waiting for the cavalry to come, and that didn't work out.
Well, the cavalry went to Chicago and had a parade. So he is Luke Jones. He is Baltimore Luke, and Luke at WNST.net. Bundy and Gonzalez. Then the afternoon game on Thursday. And hey, Journey's in town tonight. Don't stop believing, Orioles fans. The Ravens have taken the field on Tuesday, and we had a chance to catch up with Benjamin Watson and talk to Joe Flacco. We're going to hear from Terrell Suggs. You can hear all that in the Buy a Toyota audio vault. But, Luke, any observations from day one?
Day one, the most interesting little nugget that I took away from day one, first of all, Ben Watson back on the practice field. Great to see that. Hadn't seen him on the field in nearly 10 month.
Tremendous dude. Tremendous dude.
Absolutely, absolutely. But as far as just a little factoid to kind of push along the Jeremy Maclin story, and he arrived in Owings Mills Tuesday afternoon, so he wasn't there to take part in the first day of mandatory minicamp. But I asked Joe Flacco what kind of interaction he had with Maclin in the whole courtship of him being in Owings Mills last week. And the interesting thing was, Flacco said he didn't really talk to him too much when he was in the building, but Joe being a South Jersey guy, Jeremy Maclin being a former Philadelphia Eagle, they had crossed paths a couple times before. So he knew Maclin. I don't think they were best friends, but he knew him. And Joe actually revealed that while Maclin was in Buffalo on his visit early last week, before he came to Owings Mills, Joe actually fired off a little text to say, hey, don't forget about us. Make sure you at least make it here to come visit. I thought that was interesting. For
Joe recruiter Joe.
Yeah. I mean, and Joe wasn't, Joe's not someone who's going to be over the top, and he even said, look, a guy needs to make the right decision for him. As much as I'd love to have every great player come play here, I understand that that's not going to be feasible for everyone, and Baltimore's not going to be the best fit for everyone necessarily. But I did think that was interesting, and as we hear from Jeremy Maclin over the rest of minicamp and see him on the field, be interested to hear what exactly left the biggest impression with him as far as the full court press that the Ravens put on to ultimately land him in Baltimore on a 2-year deal.
He is Luke Jones. He is Baltimore Luke, and Luke at WNST.net. If there's anything going on out on the field, you'll get it first on the WNST text service. That's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. And, of course, Dennis will be here on Thursday driving you home, and we're trying to hang on. Hey, man, the Orioles are all we got now, right? I mean, like, basketball's over, hockey's over. They got to figure this thing out. And football really kind of conveniently goes away on Friday, right?
Yeah, it really does. So you hope things get a little better, at least be a little more entertaining than what this has been over the last week. It's been difficult. At this rate, feel like I'm going to be turning to Monday Night Raw a little bit more frequently if things continue down this road.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, hang in there. We're going to the All-Star game. They got to at least hang into the All-Star game when you and I go to Miami, right?
Yeah, you hope so. Well, whether it's Dylan Bundy or whoever the Orioles rep might be, we at least have that to look forward to, and that'll be fun.
Wait do you see this slum down there, this billion-dollar dome slum, the worst place you've ever watched a baseball game? How about that? Where's the worst place you've ever watched a baseball game?
Oh, probably, and I realize it has historical significance, but RFK. I mean,
that was going to be mine, too.
That was not a baseball place. I mean, I get it. I'm not trying to trash the Redskins, although I don't really care about the Redskins whatsoever.
Yes, you are. Well,
that was not the ideal place to watch a baseball game.
Perfect. Well, next month I'm taking you to Miami. You'll see. All right. Party in the city where the heat is on all day, all night, to the break of dawn, whatever it is. Baltimore Luke at WNST.net. I am Nasty at WNST.net. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, and streaming live on our Facebook. And don't forget, Planet Fitness sponsors our morning newspaper that comes to your email inbox digitally. You don't even have to line the bird cage with it or eat crabs off it. It's free. It's easy. You sign up once, you get it every day, and it's pretty good. It's all brought to you by PlanetFitness.com, our WNST morning newspaper. Peter Principles, Chapter 5, out now. You'll definitely want to check that out and feedback on our social. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, and everywhere the internet goes. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.